And Jennifer, if you would go ahead and start sharing the slides. And Jennifer, it's not in full view quite yet. I can see the speaker note. There you go. Perfect, perfect. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the September CPS Coordinators Forum. I'm Mandy Seteller. I'm the Community Engagement Representative for the National Child Passenger Safety Board. I'm also the statewide CPS Coordinator for Alaska, and I work here at the Center for Safe Alaskans. And it's my honor to serve as the moderator today for the CPS Coordinators Forum. Please enter your name and your state, and then today we're also asking what your favorite fall activity is. So if you have a moment, we'd love to hear from you and know who's joining us. Next slide. As a quick reminder, please don't participate in this forum if you're operating a motor vehicle. The recording will be posted to cpsboard.org/CPS-coordinators-forum, and that's usually done within 24 to 48 hours, so it'll be up quickly. Next slide. Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm super excited about today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mandy. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Adele Polson and I will be doing a presentation on some updates to the NDCF. We'll also be going over some of the data findings, and then we will be also starting out our presentation by looking at what's happening on a national level and diving deeper into what's happening on our NHTSA regional level. So as we move through the presentation, if you have questions, you can certainly enter those into the chat, and we will do our best to filter through those and answer as many questions as we can. So let's go ahead and get started. So I don't know how many of you have had a chance to look at the most current dashboard, but we are at almost 150,000 seat checks entered into the system. So this is as of the end of July. So I am very, very anxious to see what that month of September is going to look like. We know that we always hit a peak during that month of September. In 2022, we had an unprecedented number of seat checks entered into the system, and it looks like we are well on track to meet those goals that we had set from last year. So on average, we are entering, our technicians are entering in somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 seat checks. So just as a point of reference, in the month of between June 30th and July 31st, there were a little over 6,000 seat checks that were entered in. So again, we're just all waiting to see what those numbers are going to look like for the month of September. I asked our friends at Tennessee Tech to do a breakdown of the agencies, the accounts by organization, if you will. And so you'll see here that, and I thought this was very interesting to look at these numbers. You can see here we have a lot of fire departments that are part of the, that have created accounts in the NDCF, are listed in our agency drop-down menu, our hospital groups, health departments, fire EMS, our law enforcement, tribal partners, our Safe Kids coalitions, and then our other fields. So those other fields might be other community programs that didn't necessarily fit into any of one of these categories. We'll do, at some point we'll do a deeper dive into the different types of agencies and break that down a little bit further, but just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a snapshot of what our numbers look like with our total number of agencies. So right now we have almost 11,000 accounts, and we have a little over 2,600 agencies that have been entered into the system, and that is continuing to grow on a monthly basis. Let's see here if I can get my, there we go. All right, so let's look at what it looks like, what our snapshot looks like on a national level when we are looking at states that are either requiring the use of the NDCF, either on a statewide level or through their programs and organizations that receive state funding. And this map, I recently redid this map and updated it. And so it was exciting to see kind of those color changes that we're seeing across the the United States. So you notice that the darker colors would reflect those states that are requiring or going to start requiring as of October 1st, the use of the NDCF out in the field, whether they are requiring it statewide or through their grantees. We have many states that are strongly encouraging the use of the NDCF. And then we also have in states in local areas that are using the NDCF for their program. So it's been really exciting to see those color changes over the last couple of years. I took the data in the NHTSA regional dashboards and did some breakdowns for you to kind of give you a perspective of where we're at in each of the NHTSA regions. So you'll notice here you can identify the region that you are working in, and you can look at those total numbers for that NHTSA region. And so again, I just broke those down, the regions 1 through 10, and pulled that data just to kind of give a snapshot of where we're at on a regional level. So this is representing the total number of seat checks in each of the NHTSA regions. So then what I did, and this might be a little bit difficult for you to look at depending upon the size of the screen that you're using, but I wanted you to be able to see where maybe your state is in the number of seat checks based on your region. So these are regions 1 through 10, starting with region 1 on the left and then moving through. So you can see where your state is aligning with the other states that are in your region. And so I thought that might be an interesting perspective for you to see not only those overall numbers, but then we dive a little bit deeper in looking at where each of the states are with their number of seat checks. So then I decided I should maybe take a look at what our postnatal misuse rates are. Again, by NHTSA region, so I didn't do a breakdown by state. That's information that you as a state coordinator are going to be able to have access to. But in general, what are we seeing for our misuse rates by our NHTSA region? So again, you can see a breakdown of this information. So one thing that we do need to preface and say and tell you is that you may be looking at your misuse rate, which might be, higher or lower compared to the NHTSA region next to you, but it's really all relative compared to the number of seat checks that are entered into the system. So if you are in a NHTSA region where we don't have as many seat checks as the NHTSA region next to you, your numbers might be a little bit different. So as we grow the program and as as technicians are entering more seat checks into the system, those numbers are going to start to adjust just a little bit, but we're not seeing a huge shift in these numbers over the last several months. They've maintained pretty well, but just know that within your state, as your numbers grow, you should anticipate seeing a little bit of a shift in those postnatal misuse rates. So then we know that there's a push to do virtual seat checks. So I thought it might be a great idea to take a look at where those virtual seat checks are happening. So we have a lot of technicians that have taken advantage of those virtual seat check opportunities. When COVID hit, we know that we provided technicians an opportunity to shift in the way that they're collecting that car seat information. So we knew that caregivers weren't going to be able to meet face-to-face with a technician. And so many of your programs made that shift to utilizing those virtual seat check options. And so, and we've had technicians and programs ask us over the last couple of years, do we anticipate that those virtual seat check options will kind of go by the wayside? And we are definitely seeing a trend that is continuing. A lot of technicians are continuing to utilize that virtual seat check option. And as you may know, one of the questions that we ask on the NDCF is this part of a virtual seat check? So this is something that we were able to track. So again, just another trend and pattern that I thought that you might be interested in taking a look at. So as a friendly reminder, we get a lot of questions about the use of the app out in the field. The app is actually designed to be used in airplane mode. So when we do presentations to programs that are like, well, I can't use the app because I don't have a MiFi or I don't have a hotspot, you don't need to have a MiFi or a hotspot. All you need to do is log into that, log into the app one time. You can place it in airplane mode. Those technicians can take those devices out in the field, collect all of that car seat inspection data, which is stored within the app. It is not stored stored on the device. It's stored within the app. They can bring that device back to a location where they do have access to the internet. They can take it out of airplane mode, review those seat checks, and then upload those seat checks into their account. So it's kind of one of our, I guess, little known secrets about the NDCF, but we just wanted to make sure that you as state coordinators recognized that technicians can use the app out in the field without Wi-Fi. And I'll give you another example. If they're utilizing their devices inside a fire station, for instance, they may have strong Wi-Fi signal, but they bring it out to the parking lot and they might have spotty signal. So to avoid any of those connectivity issues, we just recommend that the technician place that device in airplane mode, again, collect all of that information and then upload it when they are in a location where they have Wi-Fi. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the NDCF updates. So on October 4th, we will be releasing the updates to the NDCF. We made very minor changes to the NDCF, but we do have some exciting updates that we want to share with you as well. You should know that the paper form version 8.0 is available and ready. It is on the homepage of the NDCF. So if your technicians have events coming up between now and the time that we will be launching the update to the NDCF, they can start using version 8.0 that is available. For those programs that are receiving those customized PDFs that have their agency liability statement and the logo on it, Tennessee Tech will be sending you a clean copy PDF of those as well. So when we work through the updates to the NDCF, we take all of the feedback that we receive from technicians, from state coordinators, from program managers, and we analyze all of that information and we look at the flow of the form, the types of questions that are being asked on the form, and utilizing all of that information to drive those updates. So here's just a kind of a snapshot of what came through this last year since October 1st of 2022 when we look at form feedback that we might get. You can see here at the top of the list would be those help me with my account questions. So how do I create an agency? How do I got locked out of my account? How do I upload a current copy of my certification card? So to help alleviate some of those kind of help questions that we get, we do have tutorial videos that can be shared with your technicians. So for instance, if they've recertified and they're not sure how to upload a current copy of their certification card, we can certainly help them with that. For form suggestions, over the last year, we received 32 form suggestions. We review that information on a weekly basis. And again, we take a serious look at what those suggestions are, and is that a suggestion that's going to benefit the field as a whole? Is it going to benefit technicians across the country? And is it easy for us to be able to implement without making too many significant changes to the form? We feel like we're in a really good place with the data that's being collected, but we know that there's always room for improvement. So we always encourage technicians, state coordinators, program managers to continue to send us in that feedback. So sometimes we have suggestions that we receive that we postpone. We're like, that is a great idea. For instance, a QR code that you could scan that would pull up all of the car seat information and just autofill it into the app. Wouldn't that be amazing? It absolutely would. We've heard that from technicians, but that would be one of those suggestions that we might postpone because we're like, if there ever came a time where we were able to do that, we could circle back to that and see if that's something that we could implement. So just kind of wanted to give you an idea of some of that feedback that we've received and the information that drives the changes in the NDCF. So we will be updating that first week in October. We will be updating all of the platforms. So the web-based platform, the 3 apps, and the paper form. And again, that paper form is available now for download on the NDCF webpage. The apps, programs will have to do an update to their app. So if they don't have a push updates on their device, they are going to have to go back in and make sure that they do an update on their devices after that first week in October. So just real quickly to highlight some of the updates to the NDCF. And again, we should encourage our technicians now to be using version 8.0. The previous version, the one that we're currently using, is version 7.0, and we are moving to that 8.0. So a couple of the changes that we made, we pulled that vehicle recall question out of the caregiver signature section to make sure that that question gets answered. It is a required question on the form, but when technicians are taking that paper form and then entering that information into their account, sometimes that question is getting missed. And so to make sure that we are drawing attention to the importance of checking for vehicle recalls, we wanted to make sure that that was part of kind of that interview section to allow the technician an opportunity to have a conversation with the caregiver about those vehicle recalls and encouraging them to enter in that license plate and to identify if their vehicle has any recalls. The other thing that we added was a question that asks, has the caregiver attended a car seat check previously? So this is a suggestion that we've gotten from technicians. And so we were able to find some room to put that into the form. So we'll be tracking that information, and hopefully in a couple of years, we'll be able to do some analysis of that. Are we seeing differences in misuse, whether a caregiver's come to an event or not? So we'll be tracking that information. We did get a suggestion, and I think this might have come from Tracy Whitman and her team, looking at grouping all of the child information and the vehicle information. So we, instead of separating out by child age, height, weight, and then going back into how was the child secured, and in the middle of that, we had, identifying where that child was found in the vehicle. We started with that vehicle question. So we're just going to shift that question, number 1 and number 2, to the beginning of that section, and then group all of the car seat information. Additionally, we added locking clip to question 11 about the car seat installation. And again, that was a request from technicians in the field that are seeing a lot of locking clip use in their areas. And then on the back side of the form, the only update that we made was that locking clip question. So we added locking clip to question 38. So again, just a real quick summary of what those updates look like. Nothing super significant, but I should also tell you that on the web-based platform and on the apps, we are adding a drop-down menu for the car seat model names. So we know that we have that car seat manufacturer alphabetized list. So when a manufacturer clicks on Britax, for example, it's then just like on our vehicle list, it's going to pull up the model name for the technician to select the model name of that car seat. So that's to alleviate some of those errors that we're seeing in reporting of those car seat models. So this is just our first step with the car seat information to try to streamline that process. So we hope that the technicians will find that useful when they're navigating through the form. All right. So again, with our dashboard updates, we are going to be adding some new variables to the table tools. We'll be using the U.S. territories. We'll be adding the U.S. territories to that map so we can hover over those maps and identify information about those U.S. territories. And then we'll add charts for vehicle compatibility. We feel like we have enough data now to be identifying those vehicle incompatibilities. And again, it's not going to call it specific car seats or manufacturers, but it is going to just be looking in general, what are we seeing for those incompatibilities when that caregiver is trying to install those car seats. So a lot of really great, exciting things happening with the data as well. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Adele, who's going to dive deeper into our data coverage. So Adele, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And just real quick, Jennifer mentioned some key dates, so I went ahead and put those into the chat box. And as of right now, Jennifer, we didn't have any questions from the first part of the presentation, but just to remind everybody, web and the web-based platform and all the apps will update on October 4th, and the site will be down October 2nd and 3rd for maintenance as Joe and his team at Tennessee Tech get everything updated. So please, please, please enter all your car seat checks from the version 7 form as soon as possible. It makes Elizabeth and our data dashboard folks much happier.
Yeah, and I think, Adele, I think there might have been a question.
I just
Yeah,
saw
if
one
we-
come in. Sorry.
Yep,
Go
if we
ahead.
can catch that real quick. So Jennifer, the purpose of airplane mode, just to make sure we're clear, is so their device doesn't drain battery trying to connect. Is that the case? Or can the app be used when not in airplane use? But the user might get better results by taking that step. I think we need more information about airplane mode.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a fantastic question. So yes, it would help with the draining of your battery if your device is trying to search for signal. So to avoid any of those connectivity issues, let's say you're in the fire station, it's great in there. You step out into the parking lot and you've got kind of a weak signal. We don't want that device to try to connect, which might ultimately interfere with the data collection. So to avoid any of those connectivity issues, it is best to just place it in airplane mode, collect all of that information, and then you can go back to a location where you have Wi-Fi and reconnect. But if you have strong Wi-Fi in your location and you're not worried about connectivity issues, you don't have to place it in airplane mode. Really, it's designed for situations where maybe you're out in a rural area of the state and you don't get any cell phone service. We want technicians to still be able to use the app and still be able to use the NDCF in those locations. And again, draining of the battery as well. If it's constantly trying to search for signal, it could drain your battery as well.
And we also had a question about whether someone could come and do an NDCF training in person. Jennifer loves to do trainings in person.
Fantastic. I would, in Adele, since I can't see the chat box, if somebody wouldn't mind putting my email in the chat box, you can absolutely reach out to me at training@carsseatcheckform.org. We will do our best to come to your location to do an in-person training. And if we can't, we've got other people that we can possibly have help us out. So thank you for that.
Okay, everybody good? Ready to dive into the data then? And I do have to say, it warms my heart to see Jennifer presenting so much data with all that regional data. I didn't touch any of that. That was all Jennifer using the different dashboards to pull that all together. And it just makes me so happy. And I hope we have lots of new data users out there. Before we discuss any kind of results or findings out of the NDCF, I always like to remind everybody, and I know if you probably heard me say this before, but just in case, just in the event you haven't, it's very important to recognize that our NDCF data doesn't represent all the children, all the car seats, or all the vehicles in the United States. It only represents those children, those vehicles, and those car seats that are at our NDCF checks. We already know that the data set is heavily overrepresented with infants. We know we see a lot of infants in rear-facing car seats. So that just means that kind of sways all of our results. And we just need to keep that in mind as we review the NDCF data. Next slide, please. Yeah, here's an excerpt of the national dashboard. Our current misuse rate is 66% for postnatal checks. That means that among the car seat checks that have children, 66% arrive with at least one misuse. We've heard from many users that they're concerned that this misuse rate is lower than other national estimates, and we understand and we completely agree. That is likely because the caregivers that attend car seat checks are more concerned about car seat safety and have more access to car seat resources. We also know that these drivers tend to participate in other safe activities, such as driving newer vehicles than most of the US population. So it's imperative to always keep in mind that for now, our misuse rates really only apply to seats checked via the NDCF. It's not a national estimate. Next slide, please. So even though we don't represent the whole US yet, there's still plenty to learn from our data. So let's take a closer look at the NDCF findings. I'm going to be presenting data that is available in the latest version of the national dashboard. Our current dashboards are through July 23. We do have over 148,000 car seat checks, which is just phenomenal. And as I mentioned, we tend to see mostly rear-facing seats with mostly infants. Our overall misuse rate is currently 63%. So what kinds of questions can we answer using this NDCF data and the dashboards? So let's take a look at that. We can definitely tell you what is the most popular type of NDCF seats. So if we can go to the next slide, as I said, that rear facing, over 89,000 of our seats are rear facing only seats. You see that we have a very big drop off. Next up is our forward facing seats, and it's only 12% of all the seats in our seat checks. So this is a trend that we have been seeing for a few years since we've done the NDCF, and I think you've heard us say that this is a concern. We need to get these older children to come back to seat checks and keep getting their car seats checked. And what's the toughest type of seat to install correctly? And also, what's the easiest? That we can definitely learn that from our NDCF data. And as we can see, our forward facing with harness seats have the highest misuse rate at 79%. So I cannot emphasize this enough. That's almost 20 percentage points over our rear facing only seats. So these forward facing seats really need a lot of help. We see our lowest misuse rate are among boosters and the rear facing seats. These are the trends we have seen now for a few years, which gives us great confidence in this data, but also, some concern that we do need to really start focusing on these older children in these forward facing seats. So next, let's take a look at misuse by age. What's the highest age range of misuse? It's our 1 to 6-year-olds, but you can see we have the highest at 73% misuse from the 2 to 4-year-olds. That lines up with what we're seeing with these forward-facing seats. So getting the messaging out that your toddler needs to come back to car seat checks is pretty important. And which installation method is better? Is seatbelt or latch easier for parents to get a correct install with? And again, consistently, we see that the seatbelt misuse is higher than the lower anchor misuse. That means that caregivers are doing a better job at installing with latch compared to the seatbelt. Let's take a look at that seatbelt misuse. As you guys know, if you say, is the seatbelt correct? And you hit no, you get this nice long and exhaustive list of what could be wrong with that seatbelt install. Let's look at the results here. 39% of the time, or the number one issue with the seatbelt install, is that the seatbelt is just too loose. Our second biggest culprit is that it is used in conjunction with the lower anchors. And we can do the same kind of deep dive with the lower anchor, because again, if you tell us there's a lower anchor issue, we ask you to identify what is wrong with those lower anchors. And the number one issue here is also that it's too loose. And second, just like we saw with the seatbelt, is that it's used in conjunction with the seatbelt. Tethers, we also like to deep dive into the tether misuse. So again, we ask you to clarify exactly what happened with that tether, and 68% of the time the tether is simply not used. We've seen this in other research, and I think this helps support the fact that we need to get the messaging out to parents that we need to be using those top tethers. And finally, our harness misuse, we also examine in detail. If you tell us there's a harness misuse, you need to explain exactly what's going on. And I don't think anyone's too surprised to see that the number one issue is that that harness is too loose. And then the second is that the slot is in the wrong placement. This does shift around. Harness being too loose has been a consistent trend. These other categories of misuse for the harness have slid around a little bit, depending on the area and depending how many car seat checks we are looking at. So in your area, you might see some different results. Our children moving into those seatbelts too soon, I think we all suspected it was yes, and the data is confirming that over and over again. What we did is we looked at the car seat type on arrival compared to that on departure. So obviously, if we see a kid in just a seatbelt on arrival and then they're placed into a booster seat or another type of seat, as you can see, some of those are even going into rear-facing convertibles, then they really did not belong in just a seatbelt only. Only 13% of our kids are arriving in seatbelts and staying in seatbelts. We also took a look at children moving to booster seats too soon. And while we see parents doing a pretty good job of selecting seats for babies and toddlers, about a quarter of the children were moved into booster seats too soon as well. So are parents bringing older children to seat checks? I'm sure based on everything I just said, You would tell me no, and you are correct, but only 2.1% of all of the seats that we're seeing are children just in booster seats. All the other times, these older children that we are observing are because they have come in with their younger siblings. So parents are not coming back with just their booster age children. This is a new piece of analysis that we recently did, and I think maybe it causes me the most concern. And we just kind of looked at our parents error prone, meaning if you make one mistake, are you likely to make other mistakes? So on seats with at least one harness related error, nearly 80% also have at least one installation error. So why that bothers me, of course, is that these errors can compound each other from a safety perspective. So what we're saying is that we have a lot of seats where the child is not installed properly or secured properly to seat, and the seat is also not installed properly. The NDCF can also tell us where in the vehicle car seats are most likely to be installed and where parents are most likely to have problems. So this was really interesting to me. This is some new analysis that we did. The outboard is the preferred location. We see most of the seats in the outboard locations, but the back middle seat has the highest misuse at 75%. So we hope to dive deeper into that. I'd like to tell you what the #1 misuse in the middle back seat is. I'm going to suspect, I think we all suspect maybe has something to do with, incorrect use of lower anchors, something like that, right? Those middle seats can be tricky for that. So hopefully next time I talk to you, I'll have you the next level of detail for this. So we've covered a ton of material today. Elizabeth does the analysis, but Jennifer and I love to talk about it, and we get very excited. So we know we throw it a lot at you. We want to just go over some of our next steps and future plans. As we mentioned, we're very excited to roll out the update to the NDCF for the 2023 year. We're also constantly working to improve the data. As Jennifer just announced, we have managed to pull together all of the car seat makes and models. I think we all need to give Jennifer a round of applause for her perseverance in working with the manufacturers, and a round of applause to all of our manufacturers for providing us these detailed lists. It is a big ask. We know how many car seat makes and models are out there, and we asked for all the car seats produced over the last 10 years. So it was not a small ask, and we really appreciate everyone's support. We do think this is the next step forward in being able to examine the data with taking into account the car seat make and model. We also hope to produce more tools for users. We would really like to work on a user guide so that you guys can take your Excel spreadsheets of data and do your own analysis. That's one of our wish list items. And of course, Elizabeth is aching to do more and more with the data. We do have more analysis, and at the top of our wish list is to do some looking at demographic information by overlaying census data and try to identify our areas of underserved communities, people that aren't being reached by our car seat checks, and how we can maybe get to them. We are always working to recruit more users. Jennifer offers monthly webinars. We're always reaching out and working with states and representatives like you. So we took a step back and we developed and published a new policy briefing to support the adoption and the use of the NDCF. It details our efficacy study that we did a couple of years ago, and hopefully provides evidence that you may use to gain more buy-in with your various departments, companies, hospitals, all of the different settings that we're trying to implement the NDCF. That's what we have today. I'm also happy to demonstrate any of the dashboard, and we can certainly respond to your questions now too. But here you have all of our contact information. I always like to give out Jennifer's 800 number in case anybody really needs help, but you know how to reach out to us for support.
Absolutely. And Adele, I can stop sharing my screen if you want to jump over to the dashboards and table tools and do some demonstration. Do we have any questions in the chat that we can answer? While we're waiting.
It looks great to see detailed information on misuse. Oh, yes. And Denise points out it's going to be an ongoing effort to keep all those car seat makes and models up to date. Yes, it will. Everybody likes that idea. Yes. So if there are any things in particular you'd like me to show off in the dashboard, feel free. I now can't see everything. So maybe Jennifer, you can stop sharing and monitor the chat
Yes.
and let me know. I think most of you have seen this. This is our main page, which just lists our total number of checks, our overall misuse rate, number of international checks, and number of virtual checks. This is the total by year. Obviously, we break it down into the different years. Somebody got a 2024 slipped in there, but 2023, as Jennifer pointed out, we had some big months in here. From this page,
Adele,
and
you just
yes,
mentioned that there was a 2024. Is that something you guys catch when you clean the data? Do you notice?
Sometimes it depends. It just depends on how it sneaks in. I didn't think it was supposed to sneak in on the form, so somebody did something tricky. So we would need to look into that. We certainly will.
And
yeah,
thank you, Kendra, for putting the link in.
Yeah, because
Yes,
I believe, I mean, we try to put as many boundaries on the data as we can. So I didn't think you were supposed to be able to go into the future with a car seat check, but clearly we have lots of creative technicians out there and somebody snuck in. So from this page, obviously we can go check anything else out we want to look at. We've got our child restraint misuse. We've got a map showing where all the car seat checks are happening, car seat information, vehicle information, and our table tools. So let's go check out our misuse. And we immediately off the bat get to pick between all checks, postnatal and prenatal checks. When I click over here on harness, you'll notice that these are some of the charts that I did show you in my presentation. Kind of, these have just the total numbers. I turned them into percentages, but to give you all the idea of the different types of misuse among the harnesses. This was a request from Tracy Whitman from Maryland, was to make all of these things downloadable. You'll see as I kind of hover around here, there's that little download button. I can download this as a PNG. For the charts, they can be exported to Excel. So we really wanted the dashboard, anything you see in the dashboard, we wanted you to be able to grab, to copy and paste and put in your own reports for your agencies, for grants, for whatever you need. So we spent a lot of time last year updating all of that. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the dashboard, I think those are really useful tools for all of the state coordinators for sure. Of course, we also have our table tool tip, which if you hover over the dashboard, pops up more details on that chart. So our overall misuse rate in Rhode Island, the total number of checks, and our top 3 misuse subcategories for harnesses. But we can flip to manufacturer direction, handle position, recline angle, all those great things. Any questions?
I
Good.
am not seeing any in the chat so far.
Perfect. So here's
It
our
looks
map
like
of
Jason
the.
had a question.
Oh,
Okay.
oh,
Does
yep,
anyone download their own data and do their own pivot table analysis, such as comparing misuse year to year?
Oh, Jason, I've been emailing with you. Yes. I don't know. I think that's a great question for our participants today. I have not heard of that. I have helped Tracy Whitman in Maryland do a little bit of that analysis. I don't know of other people downloading their data. And what Jason's referring to, so this is the national dashboard. You guys can't download the whole national data set, but for the state, you will have a link here with your, right under this data dictionary here, you'll have a link with your state data, and that will export it into Excel with all of the variables that we use for the dashboards and the clean data. So does anybody help Jason out? Anybody else using their data?
Erica
No
says
response
not yet.
Okay. And I will tell you, this is kind of one of the things that we would like to expand our the user's guide, maybe some tutorial videos. Jennifer has produced a couple of them just to do different things in Excel to help people work in Excel a little bit with their own data, but we definitely would love to expand that. And Jason, I'm happy to work with you on that. Of course, we can, I'll respond to your email and we can see if we can meet and maybe go over some of the things that you can do with your data. Yes, so back to the map, here's where all the seat checks are happening. You know, Indiana still makes up a big chunk of the seats. They used to be like 50% of our car seat checks though, right? So all the rest of our users are growing, all of Jennifer's trainings and orientations are working. But you could see things like California only still has 7,000 checks, which is great, but that's not really proportional to the population in any of these areas. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Our car seat information, you know, what the car seat by year of manufacture, as we said, we know we see a lot of safe families, right? These are a lot of newer car seats and how they're installed, a map showing that. And then this is kind of the location of where they're installed and how many seats. The vehicle information page, I always like. Again, we see a lot of newer vehicles. One of the things I think we'll be adding with the rollout is the average age of the vehicle. I think our Denise Donaldson had requested that, so we can kind of compare that to other publications on average year of vehicles all across the United States, right? Some more information there. And then we see the vehicle makes and models in the top models. We know a lot of program leads like to look at this for their specific program to try to, you know, let their technicians know, you know, we see a lot of Toyota RAV4s. So let's go over anything unique that we need to keep in mind when we're installing a car seat in a RAV4, right? That kind of thing. And then finally, the table tool. I'll love the table tool. And Jason, I was very impressed with what you had done to try to answer your own question using the table tool. It just doesn't have as much detail. We are currently looking at what other variables to put in here. You know, when we first developed the table tool, I think it just kind of overwhelmed people. And it's not necessarily intuitive, like, what do I do to use it? And hopefully now everybody's kind of heard the message that you can take any of these variables, drop them into that center column, and you get the counts broken down. And you can do that by, you know, car seat type on arrival there and get your different counts by age. Or if you're really worried about, you know, these 2 to 4 year olds that I told you about, that I'm worried about because they have the highest misuse, and see what kind of car seats they're in, you can filter and get your different tables. Then if you're like, whoa, I'm getting lost, you can just hit this button over here and reset the table. And then we have Jennifer's favorite buttons. We call these the easy buttons. The easy buttons. So overall misuse by child age. You can see those breakdowns. And again, I presented them slightly differently in my PowerPoint, but clearly this is where I'm pulling the information. I try not to cheat too much and not to bug Elizabeth too much. And then overall misuse by seat type, again, and seats distributed. We are always open and happy to add more easy buttons if there's something that we know a lot of people want to look at. We're happy to do that. If there's other variables that you guys are interested in, we can add those. We always try to balance it between like what would most people like to look at without being too overwhelming and having people scroll through all kinds of things. But it's absolutely completely easy for us to just add in new variables here. You know, car seat on arrival by child age. Yeah. Any other questions for me?
No, I'm not seeing any yet.
Okay, you guys are too easy. All right, well, any other questions, Jennifer? Anything else you want me to show off in the dashboard, or did I cover it all?
You know, I think if you want to, I think you covered it all. Fantastic. I think you just recognizing the ease of use of the table tool. You can't break anything. You can't change anything. If you get too many of those variables pulled over, just hit that reset button. If they're in Adele, I might be overstepping here, but as we are updating the dashboards and the table tools, and we start collecting more data, if there are different types of data sets that you would like for Westat to pull into that table tool using the publicly available data, please let us know if there's certain data fields that that you would like to see added.
Yeah, you're not overstepping. That would be great. There's definitely more things that we can do, and we have been in discussions trying to figure out what are the best other pieces of data to put in there.
So we do have a question from Bill, and he would like to know, is there a way to save a query you might use multiple times, or do you need to research each time?
Right now, you need to research it each time and pick the settings each time. But let me go back to the development team and see what we can do about that. I like that one. I like that one. Save your table tool query.
A fantastic idea.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think that goes back to, you know, what are those data sets that your program is interested in looking at, which is why we added those easy buttons, because in general from the field, most people want to know how many seats did they give away, what was their overall misuse rate by type of seat, overall misuse rate by child age, and that's where we came up with those easy buttons. So if you have other suggestions for things that we could, I mean, we have a little bit of room to add a couple more easy buttons. You know, again, if there's those certain queries that you're doing on a regular basis that you think other programs would also be interested in, please feel free to reach out. Additionally, your dashboards as a state coordinator, you do have access to your county map dashboards. So you can look at your county maps, and you also have a list of all of the technicians who have created accounts. So if you are in a state that is in the process of rolling out the use of the NDCF on a statewide level, and you want to compare those technicians that have created accounts with your Safe Kids list that you have, you would be able to do a comparison to see how many of your technicians have created accounts, and those that you might need to nudge a little bit to get them to create those user accounts. Another friendly reminder, as technicians are recertifying, they do need to log into their Safe Kids profile. They need to download their certification card, and it does need to be the original certification card, not a certificate that they might have received at the end of the training, or you know, something like that. It does need to be the original certification card, and they'll upload that into their user account, and then their account will be updated. In addition, if they get locked out of their account because they recertified but didn't upload a current copy of their cert card, their data is not deleted. We don't delete any data that's collected. It is still there. Once they upload a current copy of their certification card and their account is active again, they'll be able to access all of that data. Your dashboards, again, are about 6 weeks. It takes about 6 weeks for the data to be cleaned, which is really pretty impressive. Your data is available to you in the raw form by downloading those CSV files, those Excel spreadsheets. If you want to analyze your cleaned data, it's about 6 weeks in arrears, which again, when they're creating thousands of dashboards every month, it's pretty impressive that Westat is able to make that happen. But a lot of that is due to technicians entering in good quality information. We feel like we've gotten to a point with the form that we're not seeing as many errors on the form, which alleviates a lot of the time that our friends at Westat have to take to clean that data and make sure everything is where it needs to be. So very exciting to see that the technicians are doing such a great job at collecting that data. I don't have anything else. Are there any other questions? Or Adele or Allie, is there anything else you'd like to add? No? Okay.
Allie shook her head no there, Jennifer.
Okay. Thanks, Allie.
For everyone who doesn't know, Allie works with Joe at Tennessee Tech and is the one responding to a lot of your questions for help. So
Hi, everyone.
Okay. So Denise did ask, is there going to be communication with the technicians going into October? So they're going to be getting emails that say, hey, we're doing an update. Make sure that you update your app. If technicians are running into issues with the app in the field, and maybe it seems like it's a little glitchy, they do need to make sure that they're using version 8.0. So sometimes if they're using that older version, while we didn't make a lot of significant changes, there are still some changes that are going to be happening. And so we do want to make sure that they update those apps.
And how should the coordinators communicate? to their
Sure.
technicians to avoid problems? What would you
Yeah.
recommend?
Yeah, what we can do, and I'm happy to do it. I know we're closing in. Yeah, thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. She's happy to share her email if anyone's interested. We can certainly put together additional information besides what's being emailed out. And we know you receive a ton of emails all the time throughout the day, technicians the same way. And so if there's, if anybody has any other suggestions on ways that we can push that out, it certainly will be on the social media, on the board website. There'll be some information shared there as well. But if anybody has any additional information or ideas on ways that we can get the information out, please let us know. Happy to try new things. Great, thank you.
Well, thanks so much, guys. This has been really exciting, and we're excited to have a few years worth of data here in Alaska, and we're excited to see how we can use it. And it's been a really great program. Does anybody have any other questions?
Was there a few more slides too? Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I can ask Jennifer if she could share. We just have a few closing slides, but I wanted to make sure we had enough time for any questions for the NDCF team. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. So our upcoming CPS coordinators forums, Wednesday, October 18th, we're going to be talking about CPS curriculum updates and reaching diverse audiences. And December 6th, always the educator, never the installer, installing car seats in the digital era. And as a quick reminder, if there are topics that you would like for us to cover, or if there's something that you would like to share on a CPS coordinators forum, please get in touch with us. You can see the email down at the bottom, secretariat@cpsboard.org. This forum is for you, and we'd like to cover what you're interested in hearing and what you'd like to share with your state following one of these forums. Next slide. We also wanted to remind you that the CPS board has some open positions. They are a 3-year term. We have community engagement, law enforcement, and injury prevention healthcare that does close this weekend, September 30th. The application is online, so please take a few minutes. If you would like to apply, or if you know someone in your state that would be an excellent candidate, we would sure love to have them join our team. We are excited to fill these open positions. And one more slide. We do have an upcoming webinar, Learning with Peachy. This is going to be our fabulous Denise Donaldson. Denise, did you have anything to add about this webinar? I know you're on here with us.
Well, not really. I hope people will tune in for it. Thank you.
You bet they will. We love the Latch Manual. And our final slide, Jennifer, please. Oh, Safety Connection. Have you heard about this yet? Virtual seat checks, seat sign-offs, and you could also volunteer for this. Please reach out to Claudia. You can scan this code for more information. But this is really, really exciting. So please take a moment to reach out for questions. And thank you again for attending. We will stay on for a few more minutes. If there's anybody that has any questions about any of these final slides, we would love to answer those questions. Or if you have something outside of what we talked about today, we are certainly happy to chat about that too. So thanks again for joining us. Kendra, if you'll stop the recording, we'll hang out for a little bit.